So good morning, boys and girls. We're going to continue with percentages today. I'm going to correct yesterday's work, and then we're going to continue on with page 110. Okay. So the answers here now. I provided the answer for B1 yesterday, and what fraction, decimal, and percentage of each of the 100 squares is shaded. So I continued on with 2, 3, and 4. So 90%, 90 out of 100 squares were shaded in B2. 90 out of 100 squares are shaded there. So that's 90 out of 100, which is 9/10, and that's 0.90 for 90 out of 100, or 0.9. Both are the exact same. Both are the exact same. So that's 90%. Okay, guys? That's 90%. 90 out of 100 is 90% per 100. Then the next one, we had 72 here coloured in, shaded. So that's 72 out of 100 squares, which is actually, when you break it down, 18/25. Okay, and that is, now that's just to show you guys, but you don't really need it, because if it's 72 out of 100 in decimal form, that's 70, so it's 72 hundredths, which is equal to 0.72 written in its decimal form. So 0.72 converted into a fraction is 72 out of 100. Remember, there's 2 zeros in 100, so there's 2 numbers after the decimal point to reflect that. And then we know if it's 72% per 100, that is 72% as a percentage. The same for 61 of these were coloured in 4. So that's 61 squares out of a total of 100 were coloured in. And that is the exact same in decimal form as 0.61 in decimal form. And 61 per 100 is 61%. Percent as in 100, okay? Percent as in our 100 cent, right? So that's 61%. So I hope you understand that, boys and girls. They're kind of straightforward there. So 90 out of 100 is 90%. 72 out of 100 is 72%. And 61 out of 100 is 61%. Now, I showed you how to do C1 on Friday. I uploaded it for today, for Monday, but I actually recorded the lesson on the weekend. So I'm going to continue on with 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, guys? So C2, where we have 42 squares. So it says 42%, that's per 100, or red. So if it's 42% per 100, that's 42 out of 100. So 42 squares are red, straightforward. So that's 42 out of 100, or 42 hundredths is another way of saying it. Okay. 0.09 are yellow. So 0.09 written as a decimal is written as a fraction would be 9 out of 100. 0.09, 2 numbers after the place means hundredths. 2 numbers, what will I show you? 2 numbers after the decimal point reflects the 2 zeros for hundredths. It's 9 out of 100. So if it's 9 out of 100 or yellow, that's 9 squares. Then it read, where are we? 3/10 are green. So 3/10 would be, if you divided your 100 square into 10 strips, the first, so you'd have 10 and 10 and 10 and 10 the whole way down to make 100. Well, 3 of those, 3/10. So here we have it. 3/10. Here, sure, it's here. 3/10. Just say it was 3/10. How many squares is that? That's 30. Because 3/10 is 30 hundredths. How do I know that? If I wanted to get 3/10 of 100, I divide 100 by 10 to get 1/10, and that's, so 100 divided by 10 to get 1/10 is 10, and multiplied by 3 to get 3/10, that's 30. So that's 30/10. 30 out of 100, okay? That's 30 out of 100. Sorry, there was just some noise there. I thought one of the kids was coming in. 30 out of 100. So 30 out of 100 is the same as 3/10, which is 30 green. So I hope you understand that. So 42 squares were red, 9 squares were yellow, and 30 green. How did I get 30 for green? I got 3/10 of a total of 100. So to get 3/10, you must get 1/10. I divided 100 by 10 to get 1/10. and that was 10, and then multiplied by 3 to get 3/10, that's 30. So then it becomes 3 over 10 is the exact same as saying 30 out of 100. Because if I were to break 30 out of 100 into its down into its simplest form, I knock off the 0 in the top and the bottom, okay? What you do to the top, you do to the bottom, and there you have 3/10. So they're equivalent, they mean the same, they're just broken into smaller pieces, okay? Right, it's like a half. If you have 2 halves of a cake and you come away with 2/4, you're given a half or you're given 2/4. It doesn't really matter whether you take the half or 2/4. It just means you're taking the same amount except the half has been sliced again. But it's still the same amount of cake you're taking away. Now we're going on to square 3. Oh, actually, I forgot about that. So I forgot to add them up. So 42, 9 and 30 make 81. That's 81 out of 100 squares are coloured in red, yellow and green all together. So they're coloured. So that's 81% because it's 81 out of 100. That means you take 81 away from 100 and you get 19 out of 100 squares aren't coloured. So that's 19% are uncoloured. So we're going on to square 3. Colour 19% all red, 0.1 yellow and 1/4 green. So 19%, 19% is 19 out of 100. So 19 squares are red. 0.1 is 1/10 as a fraction, and a tenth of 100, but that's 10 out of 100, which is 10 squares, okay? If you're covering 1/10 of a total of 100, you're covering 10 out of 100 squares, so that's 10 squares are yellow. And then 1/4 or green. So 1/4 out of a total of 100 squares are green, so divide 100 by 4, divide 100 by 4, to get 1/4, and you get 25. That's 25 out of a total of 100 squares. Remember, there's 100 squares in the whole square. Okay, and that's 25 squares out of a total of 100 are green. 19 squares out of a total of 100 are red, and 10 squares out of a total of 100 are yellow. Now play this back, guys. I cannot explain this any clearer than what I've done. You know, I just can't. It's very, very easy once you listen back over it. 19% is 19 out of 100, which is 19 squares, they say are red. 0.1, well, we know 0.1 is a tenth, and a tenth out of 100 means 10 out. 10 squares are yellow out of a total of 100. And finally, 1/4 of your squares or of your 100 squares are green. So that's 1/4 out of a total of 100, which is 25 out of 100. That is 25 out of 100 squares are green. Then you add 19 and 10 and 25 and you get 54 out of 100. That's 54%. So if 54% are coloured, we take 54 away from the total 100%. The 54 squares that are coloured in away from the total number of squares, which is 100, and we're left with 46 out of 100 squares that are not coloured. So that's 46% for the total 100 is uncoloured. So 46% is uncoloured. Very, very clear. Now I'm going on to the square 4. Okay, guys? Square 4 is 5% are red, 0.35 or yellow. That's a mistake, and I'm sure you've realised that yourselves. And 9 out of 20 are green if you're following the method or the way it's been introduced in the last 3. So 5% is 5 out of a total of 100, and that's 5 squares. So it's 5 out of 100 squares are red. 0.35 is so there's 2 numbers after the decimal point, which means there's 2 zeros in 100. So that's 35 out of 100 because it's 35 hundredths. 35 out of 100 is the same as 35 hundredths. 5 out of 100 is the same as 5 hundredths. So 35 out of 100 squares are yellow. So that's 35 squares are yellow. And I wrote down there is a mistake in the book. They were saying red again. And then 9/20ths of your square this time is green. 9/20ths is coloured green. Okay. So how do I get 9/20ths out of the total 100 squares? To get 9/20ths, you always have to find 1/20th first, and then the answer you get, you multiply by 9. I'll repeat myself again. To get 9/20ths, to get a fraction of any number, you have to get one part first. So we have 9/20ths, but we want 1/20th. So 1/20th of 100 is 100 divided by 20, which is 5. That's equal to 1/20th. That's 1/20th. I don't want 1/20th, I want 9/20th, so I multiply. So 9/20ths is the 1/20, which is 1/20th, which is 5, multiplied by 9, which is 45. So 9/20 is 45, is equal to 45. Therefore, 45 squares are green. So 45 out of a total 100 are green. So we have now 5 red, 35 yellow, 45 green. When we add them all up together, we get 85 out of 100. Out of a total of 100 squares have been coloured in. They've been coloured in the colours red, yellow and green. Now I want to find out what percentage has not been coloured in. So 85% per 100, we take it away from 100 and we're left with 15. 15%, which is 15 out of a total of 100 squares hasn't been coloured in. So they haven't been coloured in, I mean. So that's 15 squares are uncoloured. So 15% is uncoloured. Okay, 15% is uncoloured, or 15 squares are uncoloured. They haven't been coloured in. Right? We're dealing in hundreds because it's a 100 square. Okay, and percent is also to do with hundreds. Lastly, square 5. Square 5 is 26% is red, 0.4 is yellow. Again, they've made a mistake, and 3/20 is green. So we start again. 26% is 26 out of 100. Out of a total of 100 are coloured red. So that's 26 squares are red, straightforward. 0.4 is 4 out of 10. So 4/10 is coloured yellow. So to get 1/10 of 100, because we want 4/10, so to get 1/10 we divide 100 by 10, because we're dealing in tenths this time, and we get 10. And then we multiply 10 by 4 to get 4/10. And that's 40 out of 100. So 40 out of a total of 100 squares are yellow. Not 4. If it were 4, it would be 0.04. That would be 4 out of 100. But there's one number after the decimal point, which means we're dealing in tenths, because there's 1 0 in 10. Then we get 4/10 of 100. So to get 1/10 we divide by 10. So 100 divided by 10 is 10. And then we don't want 1/10, we want 4/10. So 10 by 4 is 40. So that's 40 out of 100 squares are coloured yellow. And then finally, 3/20 is coloured in green. So to get 3/20, we first get 1/20. So 100 divided by 20 is 5. And then we multiply by 3 to get our 3/20. So 3/20 is equal to 15. That's 15 out of a total of 100%. 15 out of a total of 100 squares, I mean. And that's 15 squares are green. So we add up all our squares, 26, 40 and 15, because they are the coloured ones. And we find out that 81 out of 100 are coloured. That's 81 per 100. The percent are coloured, which means that when we take 81 away, 81 squares are coloured, we take it away from 100 squares, because it's a 100 square, and we're left with 19. 19 squares out of a total of 100 squares are not coloured in any colour. They're left uncoloured. So that's equivalent to 19% are uncoloured. Now guys, that is very clear. Should you not understand small parts, go over and listen to me say it over again. That's the beauty. You can play this over many times. Okay, now I'm going to introduce page 110. Changing decimals to percentages and percentages to decimals. Right, from decimal to percent. Here we have a decimal 0.125. Now that's 125 over, yes, 1,000, because there's 3 numbers after the decimal point and there's 3 zeros in 1,000, and that's the trick. I told you about that before, just to remember, in order to remember, it's a little trick. If there's 2 numbers after the decimal, you're dealing with hundreds. If there's 1 number after the decimal, you're dealing with tens. Why? 1/10, 1 0, hundreds, 2 zeros, 2 numbers after the decimal point, and thousands, 3 zeros, 3 numbers after the decimal point. So this would be 125 over 1,000, but we're not interested in that at the moment. I just wanted to go over that to make sure you understand. So we're changing from decimal to percent. So if we're changing to percent, we multiply by 100. Okay, you make the number 100 times bigger and then add the percent sign. So 0.125 is the decimal. We multiply by 100 to change it to percent. And we know the trick that if you multiply by 100, you move the decimal point 2 places to the right. Now that's not happening. we know what's really happening is each of the digits is increasing. So they're moving to the left because we said numbers get bigger moving to the left, numbers get smaller moving to the right. So they're getting bigger, so they're being increased times 100. Okay, so, but the trick is if you move it to decimal, it looks like the decimal point is moving 2 places to the right. So in effect, it's actually easier to follow the trick once we completely and totally 100% understand what's really happening. You have to understand you're not just moving the decimal point. The decimal point actually doesn't move at all. It's the numbers getting bigger. Okay, the numbers getting bigger. So your 1/10, when it moves 2 places, when it's increased times 100, it moves 2 places to the left and it becomes a 10, 1/10. Then your 200ths, when you multiply by 100 and increase it, it becomes 2 units. And then your 5,000ths, when you increase times 100, 1, 2, it becomes 5/10. 5,000ths, when you increase it times 100, it becomes 5/10. But the trick is, we've actually, to make it easier for us, and so we can do it quicker, we just move. It looks like the decimal point is moving 2 places to the right, when in fact the numbers are moving to the left because they're increased times 100. Times 10, you move 1 place to the left. Times 100, your numbers move 2 places to the left. Times 1,000, your numbers move 3 places to the left, to reflect the 1 0, just the trick, the 1 0, the 2 zeros and 3 zeros. But we know that we can do it much more quickly by moving the decimal point 1 place to the right for increasing times 10, 2 places to the right, increasing times 100, 3 places to the right, increasing times 1,000. But we're talking about percent, so we're increasing times 100, and it becomes 12.5%. So 0.125, when you change it to percent, you multiply by 100, you move your decimal point 2 places to the right, and you get 12.5%. Now, when you have percent, so 75%, and you want to change it back to the decimal. So to make a decimal into a percent, we multiply by 100. So therefore, it's only natural to convert it from the percentage back to the decimal. We have to divide it back. So I'll say that again. To convert a decimal to a percentage, you multiply by 100. You're changing from a decimal to a percent, you multiply by 100. But if you want to change your percent back to the original decimal, well, then you have to do the opposite to what you did when you did it from decimal to percent. You have to divide it by 100. And when you divide by 100, you move your decimal point to, it looks like you're moving your decimal point 2 places to the left. So you're 75%, so you write down 75. Remember, there's an invisible decimal point after the 75, because we know there's an invisible decimal point after every whole number, and we only put it in and use it if there's numbers after the decimal point. But for this sum, when we're dividing by 100, we know our decimal point is after the 5, and then we're dividing by 100, so it looks like the numbers will be moving to the right because they're getting smaller, and they'll move 2 places to the right. So the 5 will move 2 places to the right of the decimal, and the 7 will also move 2 places to the right. But it looks like when you're dividing by 100, it looks like the decimal point is moving 2 places to the left. When you're multiplying by 100, it looks like the decimal point is moving 2 places to the right. You have to remember that. Multiplying, the decimal point moves to the right. Dividing, the decimal point moves 2 places to the left, because the numbers are getting bigger here and smaller here. The numbers getting bigger here means the numbers go to the left. Numbers getting smaller means the numbers go to the right. Remember, your decimal point going left this way on the number line, numbers getting bigger. Going this way, the numbers are getting smaller. So look, we're getting a decimal from a percentage, so we divide by 100. So our decimal point is there after the 5, the invisible one. It goes 1, 2. So it's in front of your decimal point now is in front of the 7, because it looks, when we're dividing by 100, it looks like the decimal point is moving 2 places to the left. So then it's 0.75. So we put a 0 in front of that to show there's no units. So it's 0.75. Now go over that again. 75% divided by 100. So put down our 75. We know there's an invisible decimal point after every whole number. We just don't put it in unless we have to. If it was 75.6, 75.1, we will put the decimal point in. But because there's nothing after the decimal, there's nothing here after the decimal point, we just leave it out, but we know it's always there. We know it's always there. So we need it for division by 100. because we have to divide by 100. So we move our decimal point after the 5 and we go 1, 2, in front of the 7. So it's 0.75 and that's it. So our original decimal was 0.75. To convert this decimal to percent, we multiply by 100. So now our decimal point will move 2 places to the right. 1, 2, and then it becomes 75%. Do we leave the decimal point in there? No, we don't go 75.00% or 75.0%. There's nothing after the decimal point, so we just say 75%. So that's how you move it back the way. So divide by 100 when you're converting your percentage back to a decimal, and multiply by 100 if you're converting a decimal to a percentage. Very, very important. And it's up to you guys to look over that carefully, to listen to me several times over if you have to. If we were in the class, I'd just be saying the same thing over and over. So you can play me back over again and listen carefully and write a note, take a note on it if you have to. Now match the decimal with its equivalent percentage. Okay, so I have done them all, but I'm not going to show you them all. Sorry. I'm just going to, I did them last night. So I'm just going to do the first one. So